Hi everyone, my name is Javi and I can draw, and today I want to talk to you about something a bit special. You know how last week we saw things about thumbnailing and exploring ideas when doing your drawings? Well, today I want to tell you all about composition. So join me! Now, learning about composition is learning about creating attractive visual structures. You can use these structures to build a better illustration. There are a few rules for composition, and rules can be broken and there are exceptions to these rules, but mainly you can use them to start building a clear, understandable idea and make it into an appealing illustration or composition, There are rules for composition that, while they can be broken and there are examples, you can use these rules and should use these rules to create an interesting and visually easy to understand a scene. It should be used as a path for a clear depiction of a scene. Now, of course, this is a complex subject and it's not easy or short, so the first thing I had to do was get my knowledge right. Links to all the artists that I will mention here can be found at the description or on the notes for this video. There will also be a link to a Pinterest board where there are extra resources to reinforce all this information that I'm going to just tell you about right now. But first I want to give a very short thank you to all the patrons that are supporting me. These are Danielle, Eirol, Athena, Whitney, Chris, Ryan, Odechan, and my brother. It's a good thing that there are a few of you, so I can just thank you in all of these videos. Now, since composition is a very complex subject, I found a lot of interesting tutorials because a lot has been written about it, so I want to quickly mention them all and tell you to please go to the links and take them a look because they're really good, okay? Okay, here we go. The first is a basics of composition structure by Lully. The next is about a rule of thirds and golden ratio by Aaron Blaze. I also found one about hierarchy and the points of view in the channel called The Future. There's one about variety and unity in composition by The Visual Instructor. There's one about creating a strong visual path by Spyros Heniadis. There's also one about dynamic lines by Psychra that I want you to see. I found a very quick image that is pretty useful about the principles of art. One about hierarchy in composition by Dan Scott. And finally, one about perspective and composition by Matt Laskowski. It's a lot of material and there's more at the Pinterest board, but this is a complex subject. Once again, I'm going to repeat it because it's very important, because there's a lot of problems with illustrations that have to be solved in this moment, in the composition. So please check them out. Also, I should mention to you that this is very good material, and also just not bad material, it's very good. But in case you're lazy, well, hi, I'm Javi and I can draw. I'm here to help you, and I made a list with a few rules that are directly linked to this material that I just mentioned that I want to tell you about. So, quick tips on composition by Javi. Starting right now, I'm going to have to read this, okay? So I'm not going to look you in the eye constantly. First, choose a focal point. There is always a part in any piece of art that the artists want you to center your attention on. So just when you're thinking about what you want to draw, think exactly what you want that point to be. You have to decide it. It's not going to mystically show up. You have to think about it. Unless you're Jackson Pollock, where his whole thing was not having a focal point. Again, rules that can be broken. But in illustration, if you're not going to be making something abstract, focal point. Next, emphasize the focal point. Since you already know exactly where you want the eye of the beholder to be centered on, you have to understand how to make that eye go there. One of the most simple options is to create contrast. I mean, if there's going to be, like in the example that I'm going to show you later, a character in black or wearing a tunic or something like that, you're not going to surround this character with dark colors as well. You're going to try to surround him by light. So by creating that contrast, it will really call your eye. You will look at that contrasting image. Other way is to, well, it is called leading the eye, but for example, if you're in a scene where there's a lot of characters and you want to have a focal point and you don't want the viewer to get distracted with all these characters, things you can do is, for example, have some of the characters or all of the characters look at the focal point When you are looking at a scene and you're looking at characters looking somewhere, you're going to look what these characters are looking at. And also, if you have, for example, some architecture or some motion that the characters are doing, that would create some visual lines that would lead to the focal point that would really help your composition. 3. Create a strong visual path. Just as I told you that you can use all these lines and the characters to lead everything to the focal point, what you also will want to create is not just to have your eye constantly on the focal point, but to create a visual path around the composition so you can have the viewer look at all the scene. So you can have other lines, motions, or an architecture, or any resource that you have within the drawing that you're making that would make your eye move in certain way when it's not looking at the focal point of the image. One quick tip for this is not to put the focal point of the illustration at the center of the illustration, but try to move it just a bit and have all the other elements just dance around this focal point, and you will start, leading your eye around the image. 4. Don't cut the image in two. If there's going to be an horizon, don't put it on the center of the image, and don't divide things between what is above the horizon and below the horizon. That will completely destroy the visual path that I was just talking about. 5. Use the rule of odds. If you're going to have elements that repeat themselves like trees or maybe some animals, like you're drawing a farm and you have some trees on the background and you have some chickens running, don't use pair numbers, use odd numbers, and remember to put them just a little bit aside, like for example 2 trees on one side and 1 tree on the other side. If you're going to have chickens, try to get them odd numbered chickens and have them scattered. There's also a rule when you're trying to make things look random, you just use odd numbers and you use 2 on one side and 1 on one side, and it really helps create this idea of randomness. 6. Establish a hierarchy. I don't know if hierarchy is well said, but it doesn't matter. What I'm trying to say is that, for example, you're having 2 characters fighting, and one is the big one and powerful, and the other one is a smaller one and is getting really attacked. You will want to have the big giant character on top in the composition as well. It is one of those psychological things. So when if you try to create let me think about this. 7, that's a lot, but it's the final one. Use the rule of thirds and the golden ratio. Maybe this should have been the first rule that I wanted to talk about, but these are 2 visual guidelines that you can use when you're trying to put the elements of your composition in a way that will turn pleasing to the eye. I don't really have an understanding of why using these 2 guidelines help your composition. It's something on a psychological level, but it actually helps. So, if you have a composition and you start putting layers on top of rule of thirds, or trying to see if the golden ratio also helps, you will start adjusting your image to adapt into those standards, and it will really help. That's a lot. There were a lot of tutorials, and that's a lot of tiny tips. I'm going to show you right now how I use them on something like this. There is also more that I learned from these tutorials. Then there's a bunch of questions that I think that you should ask yourself when you're making these illustrations. I'm going to tell you all about when the moment arrives in the process. But talking about process, it was time to start drawing and to fail hard and fail fast. So I started to sketch and see what I could learn. Remember that if you want to see all the sketches or any extra drawings or anything that I've been doing during these days, remember to follow me on Instagram. You can just go there and follow me. The link is going to be below. Now let me show you what I did. Let's begin. So the page I choose to work on is page 17 and 18 of the book. The tiny description that I had for this page was that the sister, the one that pranked the little boy constantly on the book, is going back home, and while she's going back home, she sees the monster in the middle of the street. At this point of the illustration, we don't know that the monster has a life of its own, and she may or may not be thinking that this is still a costume. but I'm going to try to keep the monster just away from the viewer as a mysterious shadow figure. So because I want to hide the fact that the monster is not a costume worn by the kids anymore. So these are the few things that I wanted the image to have. I wanted the girl walking home and she sees the monster. There is like some eerie atmosphere, like a bit of fog. It's at night, it's not the best lighting situation. It has to feel a little bit ominous. Also, I wanted to add neighbors watching from their houses, scared to go out, because this is a moment where the kids have been making so many pranks dressed as a monster that the townsfolk don't want to leave their houses anymore. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. So, I started drawing. So these are the images that I have. There's some that I like more than the others. You know, this is a part of the process of thumbnailing. It doesn't really have to do with composition. If you want to see thumbnailing, go to the previous video. In the meantime, I want to move a little bit ahead here. I want you to see this comparison, because as soon as I did all the sketches that I liked, I put the rule of thirds grid in the drawing, and I started moving the elements a little bit just to see if they would help with the composition. And they did, because this is the thing that I have. Well, I'm going to zoom in a little bit and I want to tell you something about double spreads. The thing about spreads is that you have this line here, and that is the line that is going to separate the pages. The thing about that line is that it terrifies me a bit. I know that the only thing that I have to do when I'm drawing spreads is just not to put anything important near the lines, but that kind of drives me to treat the composition as two pages that are telling one story and not as one whole composition. And that's what I want it to be, because as soon as I put the rule of thirds grid here, you will see that there are vertical lines that are drawing me a lot towards the center that I wanted to avoid. But I just need to let go of that fear of putting important things on the center of the spread and just accept that this is going to be just one big composition. And I moved all these elements along. In fact, this is not all that I did. Just let me check. Okay, so here what I have is circled all the things that I adjusted by the golden ratio. You can see that there are small, subtle changes. Well, in some of them are subtle, in some of them not so subtle, but they really actually changed the composition, and it is silly to say so, but they actually helped a lot and improved it a lot. And the only weird case is here that I actually moved this tower to coincide with the lines crossing over, and that is because, well, that's one of the rules of how you use these things. Apparently, if you just move it a little bit to the right or to the left from this crossing point, it will create it will be jarring visually. I don't know much about that, but you know what? I just move all these things and they help, so, you know, I'm good. The only one that I didn't move any elements from is this one here, from this one here on the bottom, and that is because I actually did this spread as if it were a cover and the back of a book, and so this one is really just two different compositions on the same spread. It's not my favorite. So now that I had adjusted these compositions in a way that I liked, I started doing some value shading. This way I can start working on, you know, how I talked about contrast, to focus, to work the focal points and to drive the eye towards certain points. And in most of the cases I think that I did a good job. In the only one that I don't really like what I did, that I'm going to correct this later, I'm going to show you, is in this one. I think that it could be lighter, and in this one. And the rest of them, you can clearly see the girl, you can clearly see the monster. And for example, in this one, I'm using the window to throw some light towards the girl. And in this one, I have like this street light, but I don't like that much. I think I'm going to change that. Well, in fact, I did. I don't know what I'm talking like as if I was going to do something later when I already did it. I like this bridge, but it's a little bit boring, isn't it? It's the same thing with here. It's just too many horizontal flat lines. It's not as dynamic or fun. of the other compositions, because I suddenly started drawing this bridge here, and then I saw this bridge here, and then I thought like, why if they're on top of the bridge here, and suddenly it became a thing. But I don't know what to think about this. So I took a long look, and you can see me blinking around so you can check out the differences that I made. I added another bridge, and I changed some sizes and things that I didn't like. Well, the thing that I didn't like the most about some of the compositions were that in some of them, the girl was just not facing the camera, and I wanted to change that, so I did that in some of them. I changed some sizes, I added some fog. I'm at this moment, I'm pretty happy with most of the compositions, but it was time to choose some finalists. And I know that this is all things that you saw me do when we went on the thumbnailing lesson, but it is all part of the same thing, it's part of the same process. So here where I want to show you that is something that is very important. You can see here that the eyes of the girl are leading towards the monster. The shadow is leading towards the monster. This weird line is leading towards the monster. It is all leading all the way there. Here is the same case. You can see that her eyes are leading towards the monster, and I use this new bridge that I draw as a framing device. And these lines from this way are also going towards this point. They're going all towards the monster. And in some particular cases, like in this ones, you can have like this character, and you also have the neighbor on the window. Same thing here. And in this way, you're also creating a triangular composition, and that is something that is also very pleasing for apparent reasons. I don't know. But the whole point is to find ways to lead the eyes. Here you have the same thing. You have this line here, you have this line here, you have her eyesight, you have this floor where the monster is stepping on. Like, all the lines are converging to a point, and that is where the character is looking at, and that is the monster. So I chose 3 finalists. I chose this one, and this one. I developed them. They were to this side. And the first one is the weirdest one, because there's something that I want to tell you that I want to do with this book that doesn't really have to do with this particular lesson, but I want to start using some vignettes in some situations to further the storytelling of the story that I'm telling. And see, I'm such a big comic book fan that I want these images to have some comic book element in them. I don't want to use them in all because it would be forced, but I want to start trying in some of them how that would work. So I added 2 vignettes of the monster looking at the girl, and the girl suddenly looking really scared because she's seeing like the glowy red eyes of the monster. So, you know, to give some more make it a little bit more scary, I guess, but I don't know if that is needed, but I still wanted to practice it. And I know that this composition was the one that was going to help me the most to add these vignettes, because the other 2 compositions that I liked weren't going to, you know, I couldn't find the space in them. So I developed them a little bit more, and see, in this one, what I like about this one, despite these vignettes that I didn't end up using them, I'm going to show you why later, is that I have this composition here, this triangular composition here. I don't like that the monster is so close to the girl, and in this I tried these 3, and I like how this one evolved, because, well, I like, once again, I like the light from the neighbors giving some light to her. I like how this line is leading toward the monster. Also, the eyesight of the neighbors are leading to the monster. The bridge is a nice flowy curve here that I really also like, and I have some really good space for the text, which is also really important. And this one is just a tiny variation on the same thing, but it's, you know, it's just to try a few different things. And in this particular case, it's the same. I tried very different ways. I thought that this curve was throwing all the composition towards this side, making it like really heavy on this part. That is something that I still need to fix. And so I tried this, but I didn't like how it looked. It suddenly became a lot more static this way. And I like the position of this girl a lot more. Like, she has this curve to her pose that this girl doesn't have. So I kept this one. This looks really messy right now, but it makes sense, right? So I kept going. Also here you can see that I used the fog or some lightness to the background to bring the monster forward. In this particular two, I wasn't doing anything, and then I made all this a little bit lighter so you can see the monster clearer. So this is a weird part of the process, and it's not, I don't think this is how you should do it, but it's how I did it. But these are the few questions that I told you about before that I think that one should ask it's himself when they're making a composition, because I think that this may define if the composition that you're working on is working or not. I know that there's also a lot of feeling in it, like I feel like this is working or I don't feel like this is working. But here I have a few questions that I'm going to ask myself, that I'm using it at this particular moment, but I think that I should do it constantly to see if the composition is working or not, or if something should change. So here I have the conclusions, and I have all pretty drawn because I didn't do it for the video, I did it as part of the process. And you know, what is the focal point of the image? And the focal point is the monster is circled in every case. Is it emphasized enough? I feel it is, because I brought the fog, this clear fog forward, so the monster could be surrounded by light, so the monster can be dark and you can really see the contrast. Is the feeling that I'm trying to convey seen here? Well, the first and the third image, I find them to be like a bit scary and ominous, and the second one I don't really see that. I feel that the monster is too far away from the girl, and it's on top of the bridge, and the monster will have to what, like jump from the bridge and then go to the girl, and the girl is just like, I am not feeling that is scary or ominous enough. Is the action clear? I think that the action is clear in all of the three cases. Can the elements be read clearly? Yes. You understand every element of the composition and what is going on. What is the flow of the image? It is there drawn in yellow. I think that I brought like the most straight line possible to show how your eye would move around the image. Does it match the storytelling? I think it does. Is it balanced? I don't think that the third one is balanced enough. I think it's too heavy to the left, but that can be fixed. And also, you know, check proportions through the elements to see if everything is in size and place, and which is, in this case there is, because there's not a lot of elements to the composition. So considering that I was seeing a few problems with distribution of the elements, especially on the third one where I felt that it was a bit imbalanced, I thought like, well, now that we're trying all of these exercises on composition, what if instead of using the rule of thirds, I use the golden ratio? So, well, the golden ratio is a mathematical rule that will end up drawing this tiny spiral that you're seeing here on the image. It's too complex to explain right now, so just believe me that it is a very natural spiral and that it is very eye-pleasing if you work with it. So the first thing I noticed is that even though I didn't even move the monster on the second image, I wasn't really liking the second image. This one, I maybe could have moved the monster here, but it would have done nothing. It's still, I don't feel like it conveys the feeling that I want to convey. There are other images on the early stages that I think that did a better job at that, but did a worse job at many other things. And on the third one, I did move the monster around a bit, and suddenly it's like I'm liking it a little bit more. It's still more dramatic. I don't know, I just really like that image. And for the first one, you can see that I tried a second version of the first one without the vignettes, like with all the modifications that I started doing to it, but without the vignette. And using the golden ratio to find where the monster should be on the second page. And I used it, you can see here that I used the curve of the golden ratio to put the girl in place and to put the border of the window. That is something that I really like. And you can see on this image also that the flow of some shapes on the girl are very close to this curve as well. I really like both of those things. And so I decided that these two were going to be my finalists. Now this is really weird because, for example, in the video that we did about thumbnailing, I wasn't decided about a few images, but I ended up blending them together into one single image, but this one, the composition is so different. So I had the pros and cons of what I liked and what I didn't that you can read here. I like on the first one that I got to put the neighbors there, and the second one they're nowhere to be found. And the second one, what I like is that you can see the face of the girl very clearly. The image, the camera is put in a way where she's more of the point of view that I really like, and it is more dynamic with all the curves and the bridge, and also I really like this thing where the monster is in the middle of the arch and it looks like an eye. So like the monster is looking at her and she looks at it and it's like this giant eye looking at her. I really like that, but I was still undecided, so I asked some of the Patreons, and Athena and Danielle stepped forward and helped me decide. And well, here are the, let me get rid of this thing here. These are the two, well, not final versions, but pretty more elaborate sketches. And I gave everyone at Patreon the chance to choose which one they like the most, and they choose the second one. And you know what? The second one is the best one. I honestly agree. I just like it better. So I'm going to be using, you know, these lines here that you see here are going to be used for the text, whatever the text is, because I haven't written it yet. But that was the whole process about getting this composition right. And if we go back, let me see if I can find it. If we go back and see how this started, well, this is just, this silly sketch that took me 30 seconds was the one that led me towards choosing a final composition for the image. And it is a very complex process, because it is not like, it is not mechanical. Eventually, I know that this is the part of composition that drives me crazy, because you have to, I feel like I have to think a lot when I'm in this part of the process, and it should be like the simplest, where you can make the mistakes, so it shouldn't matter, but it's still like your brain is working so much. Oh, it's just so tiresome. I just really like it. Phew. Well, that's it. So, is there anything that you think that I did wrong or that I should change? Feedback is always appreciated, and I always like when you help me get better at this. I really like that. So leave a comment below, or just send me a private message, or anything. Anything is appreciated. So if you want to get the PDF and the PSD here with more notes and more sketches and more of the thoughts in this process, so you can take a look at the images and go back and forth, remember that you, with just a very small contribution, you can join the Patreon. You will be helping me a lot to make more of these videos, and you will also get these amazing perks. If you want to see more of the learning experience that I'm going through, remember to follow me on all of the social media. Like all of the social media, I'm Javi Can Draw everywhere. And if you want to have all of the social media presence put nicely in one place, just go to my website, javicandraw.com, where I just embed and put everything in just one blog post. If you like this video, give it a like. If you're new, then welcome. Click on that button that says subscribe so you can get more lessons when the lessons are ready. That's it for this week. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Javi and I can draw. And I know you can draw too. Bye.